So next up, we have got David Starley, Group Climate Lead at Babcock. Welcome, David.
Hi, thanks, Finley.
Hi. And you're going to be talking to us about access to public transport provision. I know it's a relatively short session, so I'm going to hand straight over to you. Take it away.
Thanks. So, hello everyone, and it's great to be here. So, I'm the Group Climate Lead at Babcock International Group, which is an international defence organisation, around 26,000 employees globally across the organisation. So, if we move on, I'm going to talk to you today a bit about a case study in low carbon commuting. So, Devonport is our Plymouth site. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So we've got a dockyard, which is about 3 or 4 miles long in length along the River Tamar. And there's around 6,000 people that work there, both Ministry of Defence staff and Babcock staff. So it's a big challenge to get all of those people to and from the dockyard on a weekly basis, and especially in a low carbon manner. So what was the challenge? So this is the largest dockyard in Western Europe. The parking provision is perceived as a privilege by people, but also there was a significant lack of parking in the first place and a lot of issues in the local area where employees were parking in public places and the residents weren't particularly happy about that. So Babcock did some work along with the council to look at how do we actually address that over time. One of the other challenges is that there are 3 train stations highlighted on this map, but no trains actually arrived on time with the shift patterns to these 3 stations. So the train utilization usage, as you can see on that graph, is extremely small. Whereas the accessibility of the train stations would imply that there should be a lot higher on that. The other thing being the public buses in terms of public transport, but they typically take too long for people to get the bus because they stop many places throughout Plymouth. And so it takes probably twice as long as if someone was to drive. And obviously that's not a very good incentive. Plus, of course, people do have ingrained habits, and changing commuting is changing behavior. So to change those ingrained behaviors takes a bit of effort. So if we move on, I'll start to talk about what we did about it. So the Devonport Travel to Work team was set up and led by my colleague, John Clementson. What they started was understanding the context. So some of what I've already discussed, but also preparing and releasing an employee survey. And they also worked really hard to ensure that they got a breadth and diversity of employees, because we have office-based staff as well as on the ground, on the shop floor staff. And typically they'll have different transport methods and different needs. So it was really important to ensure that we got the survey out to as many different people as possible, as well as also the consideration for the disability, accessibility needs as well of certain individuals. So there was a big employee survey completed and lots of data gathered, and then they did some number crunching. And they actually had some help from students from the university to help with this as well. And the data-driven approach then showed that the reasons for the commuting choices were primarily convenience, availability, time saving, and cost, whereas environmental reasons are very low down on people's priority, which maybe isn't surprising for this audience, but it goes back to the co-benefits that we can identify with commuting trends. So the quick win was cycling to work, and what we did was we uplifted the amount available on our Cycle to Work scheme to £5,000 so that people could access more e-bikes. Plymouth is quite hilly, so people tended not to cycle so much because of getting really sweaty and having to cycle up and down the hills. But with an e-bike, it's made so much easier. The train schedules have been changed, working closely with Great Western Railway. It helps, obviously, being one of the biggest employers in the city, but hopefully this gives a bit of an idea of what's possible for larger employers or those that join together in groups. And we've also now introduced a new bus service from the east side of Plymouth, which only stops in a few specific places, so it gets to the dockyard much faster than other public services do. And finally, as many of you are familiar with, lift share has been opted as well and offered to employees. The one thing that hasn't been pursued is ferry. Although there's a lot of marine real estate, the ferry option was a bit too expensive and actually would have taken a bit too long at this time to be an effective option. So just to share with you then what are the key learnings from this piece of work on the final slide of my presentation today. So buy-in from senior management has been absolutely key in this process. Some of these initiatives required a bit of upfront funding. For example, the bus service was made free for the first week for employees as an incentive to get people starting to use it and breaking those habits. And the support has been really great at Devonport. Bringing people on the journey is absolutely essential. So the survey also asked people for their ideas, and a number of the ones which were implemented are directly as a result of the feedback that people gave. Collaborating across the city with the different partners, both the transport providers and the council in particular. And then remembering East. So in terms of behaviour change, it needs to be easy, accessible and affordable, and also socialised with people as well. So unless you get those things ticked off, people are less likely to change their behaviours. And then finally, one of the good things I would recommend is look at the quick wins and try to get those implemented whilst also developing the longer term solutions in the background. So you can show people what you're doing and make progress as we go. And so that's my very quick presentation on this case study, and I hope that's been useful. And I'll be on the panel in a bit later on this afternoon if there's any particular questions.